Early in the morning while you're yawning, we was up watching Masanori Rikiishi take on Eduardo Sugar Nunez for the vacant IBF 130-pound title in Japan, right? And while both contenders gave it their all and fought their hearts out, only one could emerge victorious.
Is this your game?
And that was Eduardo Sugar Nunez. You know, he put on a very convincing and dominating performance to come out as the new champion, right? At the 130-pound division, you know. So with that being said, you know, as a new champ, he has some pretty intriguing and interesting fights lined up for him already, because boxing doesn't stop. And these fights are with one being his stablemate Ray Ford, you know, who's also on Matchroom,
yeah,
and the other one being the current WBO title holder Emmanuel Navarrete.
Yeah.
But you will not believe who else challenged Eduardo Sugar Nunez. Yeah, the audacity of Cacace the Apache.
If I tell you I'm good, probably you will say I'm boasting. But if I tell you I'm no good, you know one line.
Yo, what's good, Boxing Talk family? Thank you for tuning into your favorite boxing channel, Dr. Boxing Talk, and we're back for another YouTube video banger, man. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I don't know what time it is. The doctor's in the house, man. So check this out. As I said in the intro, man, we have a newly crowned king in the 130-pound division, man. Eduardo Sugar Nunez for the IBF title that was recently vacated by Anthony Cacace not too long ago, right? So he will be joining the other kings in the WBC champion O'Shaquie Foster, the WBA champion Lamont Roach, and the WBO champion Emmanuel Navarrete. Now, the two American champions, they are pretty much occupied. Of course, famously, the American Lamont Roach will be challenging Gervonta Tank Davis for his infamous and highly controversial rematch to his first fight, right? And then O'Shaquie Foster has been the current WBC champion, 130-pound division. He has been tied up with other guys like Stephen Fulton, who could potentially move up from 126 and challenge him, or Raymond Ford, you know, who's another guy that is interested in fighting Eduardo Sugar Nunez, as I mentioned before. So those two champions are pretty much preoccupied. So that leaves Emmanuel Navarrete, who's a WBO champion, the Mexican title holder, right? He is even preoccupied with Charlie Suarez, who was his mandatory, the Filipino contender, right? When they fought in their last fight that ended in a highly controversial fashion, with a lot of people thinking that Charlie Suarez should be the newly crowned king in 130-pound division. And I'm one of them, you know, but sometimes boxing goes crazy and it moves like that. But I dived in that in a whole nother video. Go check that out, you know. But right now we're here to talk about the new champion and Eduardo Sugar Nunez for the IBF title, right? So when he beat Masanori Rikiishi, dominated majority of the rounds, you know, beat him in convincing fashion, you know, he is the new champion, right? So naturally he has a lot of interesting and intriguing fights lined up for him, right? And you won't believe, I have to show you. Check it out. So Anthony Cacace, who was the title holder before, he is calling out Eduardo Sugar Nunez now. Now, you know, me, I like to come from the perspective of always appreciating the fighters, right? But I also give my critiques as well as my compliments where appropriate, right? And right now, you know, I never call Cacace a duck, because boxing, aka the sweet science, is also called aka prize fighting. And what is that prize, right? The prize is the largest amount of money that you could acquire, getting to the biggest bag. So Anthony Cacace has came out and said vehemently that he wants to pursue more lucrative fights, even though he was honored to be the champion, right? And he won the IBF title in the unification fight between the IBF and the IBO. You know, he had the IBO and Joe Cordina had the IBF when they fought, and he stopped Joe Cordina, right? That's when he obtained the IBF title, right? So then next up, he fought Josh the Leeds Warrior Warrington. But if you look at this, right, that didn't count as an IBF defense. Only the IBO belt was at stake, because Josh the Leeds Warrior Warrington wasn't an acceptable or an approved opponent according to the IBF sanctioning body. So then you fast forward to his next fight against Leigh Wood. Well, that's when he vacated the title, right? So we know that wasn't for a title. So Anthony Cacace never defended his IBF belt.
Nigga, you's a bitch!
He just acquired it from Joe Cordina, but he never defended it. And with Eduardo Sugar Nunez, the reason why this title was vacant, right, that him and Rikiishi were fighting for, is because Anthony Cacace, keep up with me now, he vacated the belt. And when he vacated it, Sugar Nunez was the mandatory. So when you say that you want to pursue more lucrative deals, that's cool. You know, I'm not coming at it from a standpoint of pocket watching or checking somebody's money, you know?
Don't speak on how they pay you, because pocket watching us men shouldn't do, and that's just by nature. But thank you.
That's what I don't do. Y'all know that from my history. But for research purposes, I have to bring this up, man. If we go and reference the IBF rulebook, page 20, we see that the champion gets the lion's share of the purse bid if the match goes to that, right? And if it's unfulfilled, that purse bid, then the champion, which would be Anthony Cacace, he would get 75% of the split, while the challenger, the mandatory challenger, Eduardo Sugar Nunez, would only get 25. So he would get the lion's share of that. And then in the scenario that everything moves forward accordingly and proceedings go forward amicably, right? Well, then the champion, Anthony Cacace, again, would get 65% of that deal. And the mandatory, which would be Sugar Nunez, he would get 35%. So once again, he would get the significant portion. So while that does not mean that the money was as much as Lay Wood, I definitely believe him, because in England, that's a big fight over there in the UK. However, it just looks kind of crazy that you're turning around after vacating your belt and calling out the guy who just acquired your belt, when if you really wanted to fight him, if you were really that confident in beating him, then you would have fought him when he was a mandatory. And the reason why Sugar Nunez might be an attractive fight to you right now is because he's a champion. Well, you were a champion. So the differential most likely wouldn't be that different, because your stock would have went up when you were a champion, just like his stake went up because he's a champion and now he's attractive to you. Now, what I'm saying is that I never called Anthony Cacace a duck. But this is duck movements, right? Because you know how we are in boxing, right? We call fighters ducks for not fighting guys that are outside of their division. We call fighters ducks for not fighting people that want to fight them, that just express the desire. We call fighters ducks for fighting guys in their division that haven't even been ordered to fight them. All these scenarios we call fighters ducks. But this guy vacated a belt when he was ordered to fight Eduardo Sugar Nunez. And I didn't call him a duck still, but now you're going to turn around and call him out?
Bullshit! Bullshit! Bullshit, 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 bullshit.
I feel like you just blatantly disrespected me, like my boxing knowledge, you know what I'm saying? Just slapping me in the face. Like, come on, bro. I'm not saying that you can't want to fight him. I'm not saying that you don't want to fight him. But this is a moment where you should just be quiet, because we don't believe you. You know, I never seen nothing like this, man. This is crazy. The man vacated the belt not to fight the mandatory. His mandatory turns around and wins, and now he calls out said mandatory. Stop it, bro. And by the way, I have Eduardo Sugar Nunez beating the hell out of Anthony Cacace if that fight ever comes into fruition. And I'm gonna just be honest, like, Anthony Cacace is a good fighter, don't get me wrong, but he never defended his belt, and that, to me, that means something, and especially when it's one of the four major sanctioning bodies, right? Shout out to the IBO. Having the IBO belt is dope too, don't get me wrong. I'm not minimizing that belt, but we know that the big dogs when it comes to these belts are the WBC belt, the WBA belt, the WBO belt, and the IBF belt, not the IBO yet. we're not in the 5-belt era, baby. We're in the 4-belt era. So I just think it looks very suspicious, the fact that you want to call out somebody that, if you really were about that life to fight him, you would have fought him before. And like I said, if there are more lucrative fights out there, then why don't you still continue to pursue them? You see what I'm saying? You fought Lay Wood. I was like, okay, bet. You know, you get more money for that fight because Eduardo Sugar Nunez is relatively unknown and he's not a champion. You wanted to vacate, go fight Lay Wood. Cool. You know what I'm saying? But then now, don't double back and tell me that this is a lucrative fight because he's a champion. Well, you were a champion. Don't you think that you would have got more lucrative fights if you were a champion? You would have been more attractive to challenge if you were a champion, you know, and you maintained your belt after successfully defended it against a guy like Sugar Nunez. You know, go fight the more lucrative fights, like you said. You know, maybe go fight Oshiki Foster. Apparently, you thought it would be easier to get those fights without being a belt holder. You know, you also mentioned Gervonta Tank Davis. You know, I know Gervonta Tank Davis is tied up right now, but then, you know, go for a more lucrative fight. The point is that, let's face it, to be honest, Anthony Cacace is not a huge name himself, you know, but you are the champion, and you saying, oh, Eddie Hearn, make me an offer, make me an offer. Eddie Hearn doesn't have to do that, because you could also make an offer because you were the champion. He was a challenger. So to make it seem like that fight was predicated off of Eddie Hearn giving you a fair deal, of course, Eddie Hearn is the guy that's a big promoter and he can make these things happen. But that fight was not predicated off of your opposition's promoter giving you a good deal. No, it's predicated off of your desire to keep the belt. That's why he was the mandatory, and you didn't want to do that. That's cool. You didn't want to fulfill your obligation as a champion. You gave it up. I applaud you for that. And you wanted to seek after, you sought after more lucrative deals. Cool. But then don't turn around and make it seem like, oh, Eduardo Sugar Nunez is easy money and that you were always willing to fight the young man. Well, we know that's not the case, because if you were, you would have fought him when you were ordered to, and kept your belt simultaneously. But yeah, this is my opinion on that, man. I just think this is crazy work. But y'all let me know what y'all think about that. Do you think Anthony Cacace is right to call out Eduardo Sugar Nunez? Do you blame Eddie Hearn for that fight not happening earlier or before when Cacace was a title holder? Or do you think Cacace's just capping and bluffing? I think he's capping and bluffing. But if the fight does go down, I think Cacace is a good fighter, and I would like to see it. But I have Eduardo Sugar Nunez beating him. I mean, I ain't gonna say beating the hell out of him, but I think he'll beat him in a very close matchup until I would say about the mid to late rounds, where Eduardo Sugar Nunez, I think, will start to take off and that pressure would get to Anthony Cacace. That's just my opinion. Y'all let me know who y'all think wins if the fight does come to fruition, and let me know if you don't think the fight's gonna happen at all. I appreciate y'all rocking with me as always. Don't forget to smack that like button, but most importantly, remember, with God, we can do anything. Without God, we're nothing. The doctor's out. Peace. From the hood to college, both worlds they had to meet. 6 degrees between us, so cold we're about to freeze. But we're Florida boys, hot takes, we bring the heat. We're moving the culture, the engineers to the streets.